scanty. We have almost no autosomal. There is a unique relationship and a unique position of the uniparental inheritance, the Y chromosome, the mitochondrial DNA inheritance. And we still have a very poor handle on how fast these genes mutate. So, we talked about time scale. So, conclusions with a question mark, because they're not finished. We know that greater than 90% of all Native Americans that have been looked at have one of 5 mitochondrial DNA types, A, B, C, D, or X. It's most likely that those origins were in Asia, and that those origins were 7, 10, 12, 15, or 30,000 years ago. Okay. There's a wide variation in frequency from population to population. Y chromosome population patterns don't always match with the mitochondrial DNA. We get one set of data from mitochondria that says this group of people came this way. We get another set from Y chromosome that says no, they came this way. And we're just now beginning to be able to put those together and see that, sometimes it was the male that dominated in where you lived. Sometimes it was the female who dominated in where the next generation was raised. And so those are problems that we still have to sort out. And that there is, in fact, a tremendous amount of genetic substructure within Native American populations. They have been split. They have been isolated. They have been brought back together. There have been tremendous numbers of demographic changes over the last 10,000 years that would influence all of these results. And so, relatively low level of autosomal studies. So, I hope that in that 50 minutes that we were able to I hope we were able to educate just a little bit, and I hope you will be patient and wait for some more results that I think most certainly are coming. And to be able to take those results and put them into the proper context, to be able to ask the questions, have the hypotheses been formed correctly, and what are the results and what do they mean, as far as any type of validity, any kind of conclusions that can be derived from DNA on the. Let me back up. I think it'd be very unwise at this point to base any conclusions on the validity of the Book of Mormon on DNA evidence. There are other ways, important ways, to test the validity of the Book of Mormon. Those are the ones that I think we need to be keen on very, very strongly. What happens if you do see Middle Eastern genes in the Americas? Does it prove the Book of Mormon correct? Absolutely not. What happens if you never see Middle Eastern genes in the Americas? Does it falsify the Book of Mormon? Absolutely not. Thanks.
If you have any questions for Brother Woodward, we'll give you about 5-10 minutes, and then we'll have Brother John Mitch from Fair address us, and then we'll go for lunch. So you just stay put, Brother Woodward. You're not done with me yet.
I heard a Jewish convert speak years ago, probably 20 years ago, and he said he read over 500 books with about 80-90% contention, and it was his observation that we are all of Jewish origin. How correct is it?
Who were Jews before they were Jews? Or what were Jews before they were Jews? What were Hebrews before they were Hebrews? Okay, well, let's get back. Okay. Yes. You could answer that question yes, and you could answer that question that that's nonsense. Okay? In that the reality is that we are all much closer related to each other than anyone has ever really cared to admit. And that's one of the huge benefits that I've seen of the Human Genome Project that has come out. That if you look at the average difference between you and me and anybody else, whether you're an Asian, an African, a Native American, a Caucasian, an Australian, it doesn't matter. We share about 99.99% of all of our genetics. Okay? humans are extremely well connected. We are much more closely related to each other than we would think, based on a few very small phenotypic differences. You know, we base a lot on skin color. There may be a half a dozen genes total out of 30 or 40,000 that deal with skin color. Okay? And so the reality of the genetic studies is that we are all cousins. Think about this. I'll use this in another lecture. How many ancestors do you have? You have 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents. How many great-great-grandparents? Come on. 16, okay, and then 32, 64. 30 generations back, which goes back about 750 years, which puts us at 1250 AD. Okay, how many ancestors do you have? 1 billion. Okay. 1 billion. That's right. 1 billion. That means I have a billion, you have a billion, you have a billion, you have a billion, you have a billion. What's wrong with this picture? There weren't that many people on the earth at that time. So what does it mean? You all married your cousins. Okay? And we're all much closer related to each other than what we think. And so if you look at it that way, the answer is, oh yes, we're very closely related to the tribes of Israel. And so are they related to all of the other groups of people on the earth. Okay? And so, yeah, it's, okay?
My question is kind of related to that. It's very similar. I understand in mitochondrial DNA. I guess kind of the question I want to ask, there's a lot of prophecies, there's a lot of revelations that were given. For example, Joseph Smith was the pure blood of Israel. Things of that nature. Not necessarily how they pertain to what you've been talking about, but overall, I guess, in your philosophy, what drives you? And do those prophecies, do those types of revelations play any part in the studies? Do they influence you personally?
Absolutely. And because it's a curious question that I've had for a long, long time. What did he mean by the blood of Israel? Okay, and by blood did he mean genetics? As I understand genetics, are we talking of in the same frame of reference? Because if I'm only half of my dad's blood in that side, 1/4 of each of my grandparents, 1/8 of each one of those. I mean, even by the time you got to Joseph coming down from Israel, I mean, how much of Israel's blood did Joseph actually have? I mean, the ancient Joseph. On that strict definition of blood. And that's one of the, I personally don't believe that was the interpretation, or is the interpretation that is being used in that case. Because I've been told, and so have a lot of you been told, about who you are and how you are related to Abraham. Okay? Does that mean that your genes have been mutated so that we all now have exactly the same genes as Abraham? Something may have changed, but it wasn't the allele patterns that we see. It wasn't the DNA patterns that we see, because we can look at all of you and we're all going to be different at our genetic level. And so that then forces me to say, okay, well, what was he talking about then? And drive that way and say, okay, can I understand? Am I missing something here? What am I missing here? Because I've looked at it in a very shallow way to this point. And so, is there something I'm missing?
I would like to ask a question about dating. Can you, with microbiology and genetics, determine dates? For example, out there in the literature, you find information that says that we all came through a single female 100,000 years ago. In the book, I think, written